Hello, hello.
I have arrived. Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Are you ready for a hype debate? Sorry, I should turn this off. Hello, how are you?
Pretty good. Let's
Pretty good.
let's consider it a conversation, okay? Because I don't even know how much I fucking know about this shit, but we'll find out. I'm curious what your take is.
Oh fuck, me neither, my dude. It gets more elaborate by the day, and I get increasingly lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's complicated shit. This is It's complicated business. We should be able to get through it, as long as we only rely on very, very general knowledge.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah, I'm more
if
interested
yeah.
kind of in the concept, I guess, of a European Union too. And then I mean we can go into some specifics as well. Um, why not? So, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Yeah, you should start. Yeah.
Okay, the case for the European Union. So it seems to me that hold on. No, okay. So it seems to me that today we live in a world that's more interconnected than it ever has been. We're using computers made in China with software made, from all over the world, and literally every possible country seems to impact every other possible country. Syrian refugee crisis, causes immigration that spreads to all of Europe, that changes opinions across all sorts of countries. And when there's a shortage of whatever in Taiwan, it impacts, the cost of RAM for gamers in Australia. And yeah, there's all sorts of shit. So it seems like if we take this knowledge that all of us are pretty interconnected, it makes sense to increase our integration across multiple countries as much as possible. So unifying legislation regarding trade, regarding trade policies, and these types of things. These big multilateral trade agreements seem to be positive insofar as it allows us to kind of integrate all of our markets. And so from that, guys, and then also there are certain problems that we face today that can only be tackled by an international collaborative effort. So things like what do we do about Russia, or maybe some things related to the Middle East, or things like climate change are big things that need to be tackled. So those are kind of my main points for why it seems like a European Union is probably a good thing.
All right, I get you, my dude. Yeah, that's a very solid, well made out case. I'm just curious. Are you streaming this? Should we do introductions or
Oh
what?
yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. I'm sorry. You should have done that. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Yeah. Sorry. You interviewed me once before, and then yeah, you can
I have. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Sorry. Sorry.
embrace yourself.
Yeah. Embrace yourself. I'll let myself hang out. Hello. My name is. Well, I go by Joseph Steinberg online occasionally. I'm a master's fucking politics student. I've done some work with Leave.eu, which was the UKIP Leave campaign. I've done some debates of MPs on Brexit. I've have some general degree of engagement with the actual movement itself. And yeah, that's about it. Follow me on Twitter, by the way.
Okay. All right. So what is your and then obviously think hopefully people here know who I am. So
All right.
what is your what's your general case against the European Union, or why do you philosophically stand against it and whatnot?
Oh, sure thing. Just to check, is my audio okay?
Yep.
Do I
You
sound like a
actually sound
robot?
great. Yeah. No, you sound good.
Thank you. Blue microphones, by the way. Use code Destiny for 10% off.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. So anyway, my case against the EU sort of lies in sort of I say more moral existentialist grounds, right? I think that the EU as a form of what international government is intrinsically a bad thing. I think that sort of the descent of what is it, the ongoing global pattern of increased globalization, the deterioration of the nation state. I don't view these as being intrinsically positive things, and I think the EU is doing a large part to ramp that up.
Okay.
And really, I just think I just view it largely as a threat to democracy and of course, my precious independence, which I'm not too big a fan of.
Okay. Okay, cool. We can kind of talk at those 2 points. So I'm kind of curious. I mean, I guess a lot of this centers back to a conversation on globalization. Why are
Right.
you so opposed to it, or why do you not like it?
Oh yeah, my main opposition to globalization is coming from sort of an international relations perspective, right? Because I obviously don't know the literature on this, but if you go into Google Scholar and look up the term atomized individual, there's tons of published literature on this, on the effect that globalization is actually causing it's not really working out as planned, because globalization was sort of penned as this thing where it's we're going to deteriorate the nation state and everyone's going to become big brained independent cosmopolitans, but that has not actually worked out. If you look at things like culture, religion, you are seeing that these things are actually rising or getting more and more extreme, right? So you're seeing a global resurgence of not just religion, but a global resurgence of extreme religion, extreme culture, extreme xenophobia and nationalism. That is directly correlated to globalization, which is what my main critique of it is.
Um, do you think that Okay, so there's two different things that we can go here.
That's okay.
So the first question is, I'm wondering if the atomization, if this is more a result of technology rather than actually like globalization. And then the second part is the idea that cultures are becoming more extreme as a response to some globalized things, which at least over the past 5 years is probably true, at least across Europe, and whether or not something like this could be prevented if we could salvage the benefits of globalization without necessarily carrying those negatives along. Which one do you want to go? Do you want to do the first one or the second one?
Probably the first one. Yeah, I'd say
Mm-hmm.
globalization is inextricably linked with technology because globalization is essentially like the extension of the process of the sort of like in the 80s, the neoliberal revolution that was like spurred on by things, just like the increased ease of travel,
Mm-hmm.
increased ease of like sending money across seas. Like without technology, you cannot have globalization.
Yeah, correct.
But of course, yeah. Then this to me like I should stop saying like this benefits a very small few, but I don't know. I just view it as being detrimental to the world as a whole.
Okay, well let's take this actually. Let's go more basic.
Okay.
Fuck, because I'm starting to feel like I know what our disagreement is going to be. And we're not going to be able to reconcile it. Are you okay with like um Are you okay with making big sacrifices to like technological progress and whatnot in an attempt to kind of like push back globalization? Is that something you'd be okay with?
Ooh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about here.
Uh huh.
It's a pretty big moral quandary for me.
It's
At
not
the same
actually. It's
time,
actually something
oh
that very few people consider. Well, because like for instance, because like you could say, well, actually, yeah, fuck technology. I would rather do this, and then my standard response would be, well, you're a fucking moron because technology is everything. But that's not really true, right? Technology is a means to an end to make us happy, and if your way makes us happier than the technological way, then that's a good argument, I think. But
yeah, I'm not really too sure.
mm-hmm.
My only like the only real like actual like lens of experience we have of this sort of like future world where everyone has like the universal basic income and like machines do everything is really like
Mm-hmm.
dystopic like science fiction. I can't have like an actual model to like imagine what such a world would like realistically look like.
Sure.
So my natural response as a conservative is just go on the side of fear, say no.
Gotcha. Um. Okay. I kind of see. I think that our differences in this are going to be like fuck. There's not going to be too much to talk about because I think our differences are going to be like rooted like pretty deeply philosophically.
Oh yeah.
I guess like I guess because everything I'm going to say is going to be for the advancement of things like technology and things of like countries working together. But it sounds like you're generally saying that as countries continue to work together, people themselves are going to become more polarized, and things are going to the net happiness is going to decrease around the world, even if like technology and prices decrease and all that shit, right?
Yeah, I'd say that because yeah, because again, as I was saying earlier, when you take away things by which people derive meaning,
Mm-hmm.
the void for meaning doesn't go away. They just construct new things to which meaning can be put in, and that tends to be a very like, radical, extreme form of like politics and government and culture. We see this in like Northern Ireland, where like both our political parties are literally the parties of terrorist organizations. We see this in America with like Trump, Le Pen, like all around the world. We're seeing this like sort of extremizing of like politics and culture, and this is like directly tied to this feeling of being atomized in a globalized world. And this to me is just like inherently not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that people are going to have that response to fear no matter what. I mean, like I would say we're probably far. How old are you? About you don't have to give exact. I'm about 30, or I'm 30, I
Oh,
guess.
24.
Oh, 24. Okay. How old were you when 9/11 happened?
Fuck. I can't do math.
You can't do math.
I do social science. You want me to do math?
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
That's homophobic.
What year were you born in? How about that? Sorry.
94, 94.
94.
So
Okay,
like,
so you would have been like 7, I guess, 7 or 8, or
yeah.
6 to 8. I guess like I would argue that like back then we were far less globalized even than we are today, even though it's barely been 20 years. I feel like today it seems like cultures cross so much more. And even back then, in response to a terrorist event, like everyone in the U.S. was ready to literally go to war with fucking anybody. Like whoever George Bush pointed the finger at, we did. So I mean, it seems like this having this like really bad fear response to like problems is a pretty natural human thing. I don't know if like everybody walling themselves off in their own countries necessarily fixes that.
Oh yeah, I don't like view
Mm-hmm.
the opposition to like international government to be pure isolation. I think we can still have like international governance,
Mm-hmm.
not international government. So I still think that things like let's say the EU was like more like say ASEAN, which is like it's like the association of like Southeast Asian nations. It's like this sort of it's like the EU with like no enforcement mechanism. So like as a whole, it's like largely just a tool for like international like coming together and like addressing issues, but there's no like overarching like political union. So countries can still do their thing while tackling like the bigger global issues, which is what the side I sort of land on.
Hmm. Gotcha. Um, I mean, our disagreements are pretty deeply rooted. Damn. You don't think it's possible to especially as like the new generation of people are obviously far different than the older, right? You don't think it's possible to grow up in a world where kind of like all of our cultures kind of cross and mesh, and people are capable of finding meaning in other things? You don't think that's possible at all? It's like,
Finding meaning in other things.
can you find meaning without necessarily living like I don't want to say like an ultra nationalist, but like does the European Union really rob you of your ability to find like individual meaning or happiness in your life?
Does it rob you to find? Well, it depends on like from where people derive their meaning. And people don't derive meaning from being part of this big like globalist collective. They typically we're looking like historically here. Historically, it's always been sort of race, religion, nationalism, ethnicity. These are things to which people in like this big this is how they like sort of ground themselves, and I don't know, they ground themselves to some place in culture. But I don't think the cosmopolitan alternative has ever actually manifested in any way.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that would be actually. Well, yeah, we're at like a really I gotta stop saying like. Fuck. We're at a really fundamental level here, though.
Yeah, I mean it's good rather than talking past each other at higher level points. Ask him about the UN. I'm guessing you're assuming the UN has teeth. You're okay with like things like NATO and the UN and whatnot, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, the UN and NATO are pretty good. They have great like modes for like international governance, modes for like discussing issues. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I'd say if we started pooling a bit too much sovereignty into those institutions, we'd have a bit of an issue. But aside from that, no, they're not too objectionable.
Gotcha.
Whereas, as opposed to the EU, which has like sort of like blatant aspirations to be a federal state, which wants all the sovereignty instead of just some of it pooled, that's a bit problematic.
Kind of. I don't necessarily agree with the. I feel like the sovereignty argument doesn't make much sense for the UK because because after you guys leave the EU, whatever regulations or restrictions they had on you before, you're going to have to adhere to them again if you make any new deals, right? For trading, it's not like you're going to escape those.
Not necessarily. I mean, I believe you're talking about remaining in the customs union. Is that it?
Yeah. Wait. What? I'm sorry. What's the difference between the customs union and the European Union? Is that like a subset of the European Union for like trading regulations, or?
Customs union is the thing that like allows people to sort of move freely, allows goods to move freely. So if we remained in the customs union, yeah, then we would still be bound to all the EU rules. But if we went for no deal,
even if you leave everything affiliated with the European Union, if you want access to that market again, you're still going to have to fall under the same restrictions, no? In order to ship products to that market, I imagine.
Yeah, that's true. But that's the same for literally every other country on Earth.
Yeah. Wait, so why do it from the outside instead of from the inside? Like, it doesn't seem you gain much there. That's my...
Oh, because on the inside, the UK has comparatively very little influence. I can send you something on this. I think it's the actual degree to which the UK is outvoted in the European Council.
Yeah, but now you're still going to get outvoted even harder, though. You won't even have a person on the Commission or like anyone in the Parliament. No?
Yeah, but I mean, like the argument here is that within the EU, we can sort of move things in our direction, in our favor, by like sort of manipulating the course of events. But I think the UK is like by far the most outvoted country in the council by far. So it clearly shows to me that like within the European project, the UK is a country with very like little or declining influence.
Yeah, but you might argue that your influence isn't as great as you'd want it to be. But when you leave, you're going to have zero influence, and you're still going to be subject to every single thing the EU does, except now on a harsher level because you have no ability to negotiate on your behalf.
I mean, I sort of get the argument, but I just fundamentally don't buy it because like you're saying,
let's say, for instance, let's say in the European Union, let's say in order to ship bananas, every banana had to look like a massive donger, right? That was like the rule. And let's say that you are British and you don't like that idea. You're from the UK and you're like, well, fuck this. But then you guys get overvoted. And you're like, well, fuck, this is bullshit. I'm getting overvoted, or people outvoting me, and I have no say, and I don't want to ship bananas that look like dongs. So you leave the European Union. You're like, fuck you guys. Now, let's say that you have a giant banana export market, and now you want to trade the European Union, and you go back to the European Union, and they're like, hey, by the way, not only do they have to be huge dongs, they have to be like at least 9 inches long because we voted on that too. And if you want to trade with our market, you have to follow literally every single regulation anyway if you want access to this market. So it seems like at the end of the day, you didn't really gain anything. Like you're still bound to all the same restrictions as the European Union had before, except now you lose your veto power, you lose your members of parliament, and you lose your spot on the commission.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but like if I take that logic as being like fundamentally true, then why shouldn't every country just join the EU?
Amen, brother. That's what I'm talking about. Globalized government. Honestly, though, My biggest problem with the EU is the shared currency, actually. And from an economic perspective, I don't know how a country can give up control of its current currency and remain solvent. That seems like a problem. So I don't know, in terms of every country joining like a global like currency, I don't see that working. But maybe there are some ways to do it. However, yeah, I mean, like greater integration across multiple markets, like these giant multinational trade agreements, things like the WTO, things like the TPP, things like the European Union, seem to be largely beneficial. Yeah, you want to. I guess like I look to like my own country as an example. Have you ever been to the U.S. before?
A few times, yeah.
Yeah. So like in the U.S., if I live in Nebraska, I can drive to Kansas and get something shipped from California and do all of this, and it's easy. I don't have to think about anything. Like I just do it. Like because we're completely and totally integrated. There's no question. Like all of our laws are more or less the same. Federally, I know more or less what I can do from one state to another. We call them states, right? From one state to another, I can do whatever the fuck, knowing what the federal laws are, and it just makes everything like pretty easy. If this was like 50 or 48 individual countries that were in this area, I don't know. It just feels like it would be a much more of a clusterfuck, and it would be harder to do anything, I guess.
Yeah, that argument would be true if each European country like wasn't, say, already ostensibly dedicated to like the process of free trade, but really they already are. So I don't think that. I think this sort of like negates the harm you're laying out here.
Well, but the European Union helped you guys like financially integrate quite a bit, no? Especially for its negatives, like sharing a common currency, the free movement stuff, the Schengen area or whatever, is, from what I've heard, like pretty awesome. If you have any EU passport, you can just move freely between any EU country. These things, I thought most people in the EU are hailing as largely positive.
I mean, it's an interesting case, but the UK is not currently in Schengen, nor is it in the euro.
Well, yeah, but that's an even stronger argument for you guys to have stayed, because you didn't even have to follow those regulations. And you got to keep your own currency as well. You guys had like the golden fucking deal. And you had veto power in the EU Parliament. I don't know. It seems like you had a lot of benefits from being there, and now when you leave, you're going to lose all those benefits, but you're still going to have to stay with all the restrictions that are there before. If you want access to that EU market, you're going to have to follow whatever they vote on.
I mean, yeah, that is true. If we, I'm sort of like, I think we're at like a sort of like almost like fundamental like impasse here. Because again, I get the argument you're making, but it seems to me that the argument you're making applies to. Are you like sort of like low key advocating for like some sort of like international like super government or like what?
I don't. That would, ideally, I would say yes, but I don't think that we're there yet. I don't think that's possible. I guess like the way that I see it is, I guess like I'm coming at this from, I'm an extreme liberal, like very much not big into culture, not big into nationalism, like very, very individual, incredibly individualistic. So I guess like my hope would be that a lot of people would be capable of seeing themselves independent, or of not needing necessarily like this group identity of a country in order to get fulfillment in life, that you could find fulfillment with like friends or families or loved ones, and then you can kind of just see yourself as like a broader collective. But that's a pretty extreme position to take. I know that a lot of people like point back to heritage and ethnicity and shit like that, but
No, it's interesting. You talk to things about like people like deriving sort of a sense of belonging from like their family or where they grew up or where they belong. But sort of globalism sort of like destroys and deconstructs that too, because it requires literally everyone to be ostensibly mobile. I mean, you yourself like had to move to California for your job. Like the system you were under mandated that you be mobile.
Well, it didn't actually. I could have stayed in Nebraska. The system that I live under now.
Less optimal.
Yeah, less optimal. Well, but that less optimal is going to exist whether or not we're globalized. But globalization just gives me the ability to actually to act on it. Right now, I can't. Now I do have the opportunity to move somewhere else, although it's within my country. This isn't necessarily globalization, but
I mean that's true for you. But there are many people who live in like say these like Rust Belt states where there are no jobs whatsoever, and they have no choice but to move if they want to, like literally even survive. Like globalization mandates that they leave every aspect of their culture and belonging that they have and just toss it aside to be an economically productive unit in this like weird globalist machine. And that to me is just like not a net positive for like humanity.
I would believe you, except like countries have faced severe economic turmoil way before anything having to do with globalization, right? Like plenty of countries have had horrible, the Great Depression in the U.S., like plenty of countries have had horrible like economic downturns, people dying and shit from hunger and starvation and all that without there needing to be globalization. I don't think these two things are inexorably tied to one another.
I mean, it's just so weird that you would like you offer a defense for the system, but the only comparative one you have is an absolute disaster.
Wait, what do you mean?
You're like, well, globalism is not so bad. Look, people do this when there's famine and war. It's just like,
well, because you're naming a negative. I mean, if we want to talk about the benefits of globalization, globalization has lifted like unprecedented numbers of people out of poverty. African countries are joining the first world at like record rates. Technology is available in an astounding ease to like more people in the world than have ever been at any point in time. I think 4 billion people have access to the internet. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Ooh, is that liberalism though? I mean, I don't know. I think when you account that much of the economic growth of like the 20th century and 21st century has been these like authoritarian countries like China these anti-liberal like African like despotic countries. Like this is where all the new like capitalist economic
Hmm.
growth is coming from. Like I don't think this has been like a triumph of liberalism. This has been a triumph of illiberalism, of like illiberal democracy almost.
I mean, like those particular countries might be, but the process of opening these countries up to trade with other countries to kind of support them, developing economies like China and India, and India, like, I mean, are growing largely on the backs of being able to trade with other countries and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, it seems like globalization has definitely helped here.
I mean, that's like you're operating under like so many axioms here. It's just like it's like trade is good because trade is good, therefore the world is improving because there is more trade. But I don't like necessarily buy those like baseline assumptions.
Oh, I'm not just looking at trade. I'm looking at things like infant mortality, like healthcare rates around the
Yeah,
world, things like the rise in like GDP per capita, things like I guess like average number of literate
yeah.
people. Like these things all seem to be increasing across African countries like pretty quickly. Like,
It is true. Ask you, like, who do you think is more responsible for that? The sort of like IMF, these like liberal like international institutions. Do you think it's more responsible for, say, China investing billions upon billions of dollars in these places? Is it in fact because of illiberal, sort of anti-democratic countries that we're seeing such a rise in like the grandeur of living in these like
I mean,
third
it
world countries?
could be a combination of both. No, I mean, like, and even if China was investing a lot, what exactly is the problem with that?
The problem with that is that, well, if you claim to be a liberal, it should be a huge problem for you because they are spread. Because I think like China does not tie like things like human rights to its aid. So it's pretty. If you're interested in like spreading liberalism, you're interested in spreading liberal values of like democracy, freedom. And China is not
Or
spreading that.
yeah, be careful real quick. When you say spread democracy and freedom, this sounds like imperialism to me.
Welcome to liberalism. Welcome to liberalism.
Okay,
Go on.
sure. I guess, yeah. So maybe I should back up. I'm not like the big like imperialist like deliver democracy all over the world or whatever. Just more increasing people's access to global markets and easing the integration of all these different countries into global markets seems to be largely beneficial to people around the world. It seems to give them access to cheaper goods, seems to increase their standards of living, and then it gives like their markets, like their jobs and whatnot, the ability to do things that they weren't able to before. Like even in China, which is kind of shitty, like the median wages there are rising pretty quickly, and they've got like a growing middle class and whatnot. It seems to be good.
Yeah, it's big because you again cite China, but China has got rid not by being a liberal democracy or like a liberal economy. China has cheated its way through the system. It's acted in pure bad faith. It acts like every single arrangement it engages in is a zero-sum game.
Well,
Like China has got rich by being anti-liberal, and that's like the
China's
real,
got, but China got rich
problem
off
you
the
have.
back of free trade, right? China needs trade in order for it to work, right? That's where China's like China is like the largest trading person in the world, right?
It's not really free on their end because again they choose
Yeah,
what like specific goods to the country. It's not free on there. They act like it's a zero-sum game, whereas liberals are pretending that it's mutually beneficial. So what I would say to you is that if you're doing like you're doing a deal with someone and they think they're fucking you over, but you think it's mutually beneficial, is like what is it? Are you being fucked over or not?
I mean, yeah, I mean, like that's not I mean, it's not good. China obviously has a lot of bad practices they do right now that we hope to get. I mean, like most of the cases brought to the WTO seem to rule out in favor of countries that are filing charges against them. So I mean, like hopefully with large kind of like multinational trade agreements, unfortunately we kind of abandoned the TPP completely. But like with these large multinational trade agreements, you kind of hope to force China in line. I'm not arguing that China has been a great actor on the global stage in terms of how they approach trade. I'm just saying that the country is only able to get as rich as they are because of global trade, right? That without access to all of those global markets, they would probably be pretty fucked compared to where they are now.
Definitely. Definitely, yeah. I think that if you're worried about like the future of liberalism going on to the 21st century, you shouldn't be worried about populism. You should be worried about China because they're the ones who prove like the existential like baseline threat when these like sort of non-capitalist authoritarian actors become the best like espousers of capitalism. That to me proves a very like existential problem if you are a liberal person.
I mean, isn't China liberalizing today compared to what they were, like 20 or 30 or 40 years ago? Hasn't China's middle class been like kind of moving in that direction or?
I'm not too sure. I know that like the wealth is held in very few hands. The government essentially controls all the big like companies. I don't think it's very free at all. It's very like selective. Yeah, China's a bit fucked. Well, they're not fucked. We're fucked. But yeah.
I don't know.
Hail
I mean,
China.
like, it seems like if what you're saying is true, then every country kind of like turning their back on everyone else and kind of going into their own shit is literally going to make things like a million times worse.
Well, not necessarily.
Well, because China's still going to be their one single unified country that's going to be like outcompeting the rest of the world, and now we kind of lose all of our leverage on China as a result because now we have no more multinational trade agreements or whatever. No.
I don't know, because you understand, my model isn't an end to sort of international cooperation. Mine's just an end to like international government. And like if you view like sort of international like institutions as being the way to stop China, China has only gotten as powerful as it has as it is fully engaged in these sort of international organizations. Like China's like big represented the WTO. China like has sort of like I don't know like racked these institutions over the coal to extract like maximum benefit from them.
Well, but that's
In
not. I don't
like,
think. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think in the WTO, I think the WTO generally favors the party that brings a suit to the WTO to rule against other people. Like we even had a suit against them for the IP shit, but then we started the tariff stop. So I don't know if that's going to go through or not. But I don't think China has been able to abuse the WTO to get favorable rulings. Like everything that I've read about the WTO seems to make it a pretty decent organization if people actually go through the process.
yeah, I get you. I'm not sure. All you can see is that China is engaging in these sort of like liberal international organizations while not being liberal itself, and it is heavily engaged and heavily using them to extract like benefit for itself. So if you're viewing like liberal institutionalism as a block to China, I would say to you, liberal institutionalism is what has enabled China to have the rights that it has.
Yeah, I guess, but like if you wanted to stand up to China, I guess like the way to do this is through these kind of like larger trade agreements or through these larger organizations, right? Like the EU as a whole represents a larger market than China and has the ability to theoretically bully or force China's hand to change. But I mean, like without the EU, like any individual country, like outside of maybe the US and a couple others, I don't know how much China is going to care in terms of like being pressured by somebody for trading related stuff.
I could like sort of like theoretically buy your argument if you say like expanded the EU beyond what it is right now. Let's say that you as an American, like, would you support, say, the integration of Russia into the EU? Because everything you're saying right now would be true if Russia was part of the EU.
That's a really hard one because Russia has a very special role in the world right now, and especially with NATO, it seems like we're not very friendly with each other. So that, unfortunately, that seems impossible. But I mean, like, I mean, if Russia wanted to, yeah, but like in this current world, that's not possible, right? Like, but theoretically, yeah, that would be good.
No, because what you're saying is like sort of problematic to me because you were laying out this vision of the EU as being a roadblock to sort of Chinese domination. When I actually lay out the pathway to you that would enable the EU to actually be a proper roadblock, which would be like integrating Russia, you immediately pull away from it. Because if the EU integrated Russia, that would make it a threat to America and a threat to American interests. It could actually stand up for itself and be the actual power you claim it is. I think that Americans seemingly don't want that for some reason. And I wonder why.
You Europeans don't want it either, right? I mean, like you guys kind of in the war of the U.S. versus the USSR. I mean, everybody kind of most of the world sided with America. It seems. I mean, in terms of how NATO and everything works. I mean, if you guys wanted to go the Russia route and say fuck off to America, which hey, after fucking Trump, I wouldn't fucking I could see the argument for it. I mean, if you wanted to do that, yeah, that'd be fine. I'm just saying that like I mean, like in a perfect world, like Russia, the U.S. and I guess China too would all be friends with each other. I'm just saying that like integrating Russia into the EU doesn't seem like anybody in the West wants that right now. I could be wrong. Maybe the general consensus around Europe is a lot different, but I'm not aware of that if that's true.
Oh no, nobody wants it because America doesn't want it because as we know now, I think it was apparently according to what is it? I've got like the document here. Like wasn't the EU in its like origin founding stages is ostensibly an American project meant designed to be the counterbalance to the USSR?
Is that true? I thought it started off as just a giant trade block.
Yeah, I'm gonna link you something. You know, the EU in its like very, very like early origin days was ostensibly an American project.
Hold on one second. I don't think I can read this right now.
Oh yeah, it's a big boy document. If you Google it, I think there's like a Huffington Post article. Yeah, my dude, get into it. Get into the true nature of the EU.
Well, I mean, like I've read like a lot of like the preliminary background stuff. I've just never like I've never heard that it was like a U.S. project.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course, Americans have always been big into the EU. Because for one, I think the official argument is that it's just the EU is just so much simpler, so much easier. We can talk to one organization instead of just 20. I think the actual reason is the EU sort of enshrines American hegemony over Western Europe and now I don't know, increasingly
Well,
Eastern Europe.
firstly, the trade thing is true, right? If I want to sell products to any country in Europe, all I have to do is
Yeah.
associate with the European Union, which is
Yeah.
grossly simplified. That's awesome. That is a really good thing. Now, whether or not that's not the real reason we like the EU and it's because we want to enshrine U.S. interest, I mean, like my country is shitty enough that I think it would go for that either way, whether or not there was a European Union or not. Also, I don't know if I feel like don't we use NATO more than the European Union to kind of like NATO and the UN in order to kind of like push the foreign U.S. influence more so than like the European Union? Like for instance, like when we expand NATO to like include like other Eastern European countries and shit, like isn't that more kind of our aggressive like geopolitical play rather than doing things with the European Union?
Yeah, that's like coming up from like a very sort of like security like heavy perspective of it. We're sort of ignoring like the cultural influence, the sort of trade influence, economic influence, the sort of ongoing political domination of the European Union. Like my general theory is my general like, perspective is that like the EU is designed to be essentially a subservient entity to America, and if we are
The
to
European
like
Union is larger than America, though. Isn't your GDP like twice ours? Like,
yeah, if you like mash everyone's economy together, it's technically larger. But like that's literally just a big number. It
well,
doesn't
no, but that's
translate
literally
to
what the
Bitcoin
EU
numbers.
is. You are a unified trade bloc. It's not just mashing everything together. That's what the European Union represents, like the largest unified market in the world.
Yeah, but you're like trying to like determine economic strength, and you're doing it by just like mashing everyone's GDP together and being like, here we go. That's not like an accurate representation of like the EU as a whole.
Well, what would be a
'Cause it's
better
not- it's not-
representation?
fuck, I don't know. It's not because there's not like full economic integration yet, so you can't like use that sort of like data. It doesn't like work like it would for a country. You're using like numbers designed for a country and using it for the EU, which the EU is not there yet, essentially.
How is it not there?
Because the EU is not a federated nation of states yet. It's not the United States of Europe yet.
Well, I don't think it needs to be. That's not what its goal was, or at least that's not as far as I'm aware.
Oh yes, it is. Yes, it is. I think in 1970 there was a document that said ostensibly that there was a goal, desire to be. I can link it to you.
Well, I mean, I'm sure people have said this. If this is like some random leader or whatever saying like it would be nice if one day this could happen, that's a lot different than the EU is currently trying to create like a federated nation of nation states across Europe.
Well, okay. The EU has like it's like a common phrase. It's ever closer union. What does that phrase mean to you?
It sounds like something an anti-globalist would say because they feel like the EU is about to create the EU army and march in and force every country to become part of the EU states of Europe. That's what it sounds like to me.
No, ever closer union is a very real thing. David Cameron made a big deal out of getting us on a sort of like moral exemption from it when he was doing his like sort of EU renegotiation. But no, the EU has like it's like documented like 7 times in like the European archives. Been said multiple times. A lot of political actors today, like what's the name of the Dutch guy? I forget. Lots of political leaders today still advocate a federalized Europe. It's not a niche thing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make strong arguments for it, but I mean, just because there's people that advocate for it, I mean, that's always going to happen, whether everybody breaks up or not. I don't think that means that the EU is necessarily going to become like a federalized European country. Like the EU is going to become like the country of Europe.
Yeah, well, again, the motto the EU operates under is ever closer union, which means as time goes on, they will become increasingly integrated. I don't know what the endpoint for like forever integration is to you, but to me the endpoint is an integrated unit, which would be essentially a country, right?
I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't necessarily think it has to be that. Like, I mean, it could just be
yeah.
ease of access to different countries, ease of trade. I mean, like easing different, I guess, things from country to country. Like, I don't know, like.
I don't know, because the EU is, of course, an economic and political union. So ever closer union means politically and economically we will be ever closer linked.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to
that's
erase your
ever.
individual government. Like even in the United States, our states all have like we have state governments and we even have city governments in the United States.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because on the actual like document it said it's a very conceivable scenario where individual European countries would have less authority. What is it? No, less sovereignty than an average American state. Like this is like on document in like the EU Parliament.
I mean, they might be in documents, but in practice, I don't think this is even remotely true. No.
In practice, is integration not an EU practice right now? Or...
Not like insofar as like countries are losing the ability to govern themselves.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. It's a pretty young project. I think it started in the 90s, so yeah, not yet.
The EU started in like the 50s, 60s, didn't it?
No, it started as like the European Economic Community. Then the EU like evolved at a later date. I'm sure it was the 90s.
Sure. Yeah, the EU itself,
Yeah.
but the precursors,
Yeah.
and this is what I was confused because I thought the precursors were all like trading blocks or whatever.
The European Economic Community was just like, which is economic union, but then it
Mhm.
became, then we had a political union, and that's when the trouble started.
Well, I mean, okay.
And I don't think that's a good thing.
Sure, yeah, I understand. Um,
But yeah, no. Why don't I ask you a question?
mhm.
What would it take in your mind for me to convince you that like the EU would like not be an optimal thing? Like, is there any like silver bullet I can give you or what?
I think we're so fundamentally different. It's hard. Um, we can't really communicate across to one another these types of things because like for me, like I value things like everything that I value is going to be economically geared, so you would have to demonstrate to me that that the EU is not good economically. And then for you, like you have different values that are more important to you. You would argue that, well, maximizing economic shit, that doesn't matter if it's not making people happy or if people are more miserable or shit. Like that's, I imagine is something you would say, which is fine, which is true. But so like we kind of like, yeah, I don't know how we would ever convince one another.
Money is everything. Get into that liberalism, dude. That's peak liberalism right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Absolutely haram.
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's not bad. It's sort of a respectable point almost.
Sure. Well, I mean, like my
Yeah.
argument, and then my argument would go a step further, right? Like technology and money has to serve, people's happiness to an end. I do agree with you. You brought up like Rust Belt states, and even in Britain, right? There are people that have been losers of kind of like these more globalized economic practices. It definitely happens. And you'd be an idiot to say otherwise. But I guess like my goal would be to find ways to maintain the benefits of globalization while helping those that are the most affected, whether it's via tax policy or something.
Yeah.
But still continue to reap the benefits of that, the technological advancements and all the, I guess, globalized economy and whatnot.
Oh, is this the classic? It's okay if they lose their jobs because they'll have cheaper iPhones argument. Is this that? Or what?
Well, kind of, but more so than that, right? You would find ways to redistribute winnings from the redistribute earnings from the winners to the losers, for instance. So, like, say for instance, like Apple is getting like massive fucking benefits from trading with China for iPhones or cheap iPhones or some shit like.
Yeah.
If they're benefiting so much off of that policy, maybe an intelligent tax policy would be something that taxes them and redistributes that money to people that are most affected by these types of things. So if there are like people in the US that would have manufactured those products, maybe money goes to them either through education or some sort of tax subsidy or something to help those people. Something like that. Something so we can continue to reap the benefits and then help the people that end up getting left behind somehow.
Okay, so mass deindustrialization is justified on virtue of, well, they'll have cheaper like iPhones, and then we'll have a bit of a welfare state to help them out. Is that like sort of like your case, or?
Yeah, basically, yeah. That I would want to allocate when I'm looking at like economic resources. My goal would be to allocate these around the world as efficiently as possible. If China can build things cheaper than the U.S., then I would rather let them capitalize on that comparative advantage and then take advantage of that, and then find other things for people in the U.S. to do.
Yeah, I get the argument you're making, but you're setting off a lot of red flags for me because in like the UK we have like a very like observable like model of that exact same thing happening, which would be like sort of the north of England, where you had these sort of big industrial towns, mining towns that were like shut down under Margaret Thatcher.
Mm-hmm.
But like unlike the US, there was actually a welfare state to like support them. But these places are not happy places by virtue of welfare. They're very stagnant, very emotionally like dead places.
Oh yeah, for sure. Places
Yeah.
like Detroit in the United States, these once massive like manufacturing areas in the U.S., are completely dead, and people there feel like shit. I agree, but I mean, like the thing is, I don't think we can live in the past. I don't think that you can ever like freeze frame something. It's like, well, this is what it's going to look like for the next 200 years. Industries die. We have to figure out ways to adjust and move on. That's kind of like the way of the new world, right? It is leaving things in the past that are in the past and then figuring out new ways to adapt and move on. If you don't, someone else will. That might be my inner liberal capitalist talking again, but.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to go back to the past.
Mm-hmm.
I just think we've chosen the wrong future.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, like,
Big
if you have two options in front of you, and one is like you continue to manufacture shit in your own country at twice the cost, and that it impacts people's ability to either purchase those products or to start other businesses. I mean, I don't know. That just seems like not just so that some people can maintain their happiness because they can't find purpose outside of like a job or something. I don't know. Yeah, that just seems. I don't know. I don't like that future. I feel like humans can do more. I feel.
I don't know. like surely even like under your own model, you're acknowledging that either way we are going to be paying for these people in one way or the other,
Mhm.
whether it's through welfare or benefits or like artificially supporting their like industries. Under which version of events is like the superior outcome achieved?
Taxation,
One where
100%. Because taxation,
100%.
oh yeah, because taxation can be targeted. If I want to levy a tax to help somebody, I can put that tax exactly where I need it to go in my economy. If Apple is making massive fucking gains off of global trade,
Okay.
then I can put the tax exactly on them and make them pay for it, which is good. I like that. Whereas if we do, like, if we keep all the manufacturing here, well, poor people spend a greater percentage of their income on goods than wealthy people. So if you need to buy a car or something and you're poor, it's going to be more of your income than a wealthy person. That cost ends up getting spread out to society in very uneven
Yeah.
ways, and that could be detrimental to other people in the country that can't really afford those things. And then I think that that's much worse than effectively targeting something with some sort of tax policy.
I mean, I don't know. It just seems to me that like under either model, we're acknowledging that we are going to have to pay for like these like poor Rust Belt workers one way or the other. I
Yeah,
just think
that's true.
under my system, we provide means for them to like derive meaning via employment instead of just like laying there to rot and deteriorate or like be forced to move like somewhere else where like the jobs are. It seems to me that, like under my case, like the social harms on your side are so extreme and devastating to like the human spirit that I really can't find them tenable on any like moral level.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand what you're saying. I guess that on my level, I would just hope that I mean, I guess on your level, yours might work because people never really see what they're missing. Maybe people would think that it's normal that like a poor person just shouldn't be able to afford a very good cell phone, or a poor person shouldn't be able to afford, some product, or that certain businesses just shouldn't exist because people don't have the money to spend at those types of businesses. But I feel like in my level, in my area, because economics isn't a zero-sum game, that when countries take advantage of the opportunities and advantages of each country, that it opens up the people in every country to do more stuff. So for instance, like in your world, like we can keep manufacturing in the United States, and then we can say, fuck you, China, tariff your shit. We're going to make our own products here. But then at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, we get to help some small subset of Americans keep their jobs, manufacturing things in plants. But now every single person in the US that has to buy products from them is going to be impacted. Every single person in the US that wants to make a business or sell another product is impacted as well, because people won't have as much money to spend because they're wasting money keeping that small subset of Americans happy. And I don't like that alternative, I guess.
I mean, yeah, but like all side are purely economic. Like I
Wait, hold on.
understand
I'm
that this
sorry.
is
Wait.
like
You cut out real quick. You said
oh,
all what are purely
oh,
economic?
sorry, all the harms you were listening to me are like purely economic. Like, surely your philosophy like sort of transcends that even slightly. Like
I mean,
surely you
I
acknowledge
mean,
like where is the room for like happiness and community or like any of the things that like makes America America beyond just dollar signs? Like surely there's some like greater sense of like being or social contract or like need to help your fellow people, right?
yeah, and I mean, like, this is all kind of. I mean, when I'm using economic terms, but economics is just a means to an end. Like somebody being able to start a business and selling, instruments on a block is probably going to give them a lot of fulfillment. And if people have the money to support a business like that because they're spending less on common goods and products, it's probably a really good thing. Wealth are poor people who maybe aren't middle class even, that have the ability to have like cool gizmos and gadgets and shit. Probably the ability to call people on a cell phone or whatever, or the ability to buy a car or purchase some other thing. I mean, it's probably like a decent thing, rather than kind of living and realizing like, oh, well, if you're poor, you just don't get certain types of technology, I guess. Now, obviously, in and of themselves, like none of this makes people happy. I don't know if I would necessarily say that just working a job makes people happy either, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like the burden would be on you as well. Like I don't know if I would say that just because we've kept around like certain manufacturing jobs, now people have purpose and happiness in life. That's where I would want people to find it.
We're not purpose or happiness, but they have like meaning to their lives. They have something to that makes them them. So then, like beyond being just like this, sort of this like faceless automaton in this globalized world, they are the miner from Mississippi, and in line of like a long generation of miners. They have like a long family history. They have something in this world to which they belong, to which roots them in place. And that I say that sort of like root, that sort of like cultural root in history, like sort of prevents things like extremism, prevents things like nationalism, prevents things like even like racism, that sort of thing. Because people really only turn to these like extreme forms of like nationalist exclusionary meaning when like the traditional meaning is stripped from them. Like I'm saying is that like you're not really like even then I think on like even like the social harm level, I think what you're saying is like a little bit problematic, because to me like your economic system I see as being somewhat like intrinsically unfair. Because I sort of get it, right? Because like globalization also causes like an increase of inequality around the world, and that's like an observable like reality. So like from my like sort of like perspective on like sort of neoliberal economics, your system of being sort of like takes wealth and production away from like small states, moves it to like big coastal Californian states, and how is that not a redistribution of wealth from the poor to the rich? Like how is that a fair, justifiable system?
Well, I mean, the goal is to continue the education level of your people and give them opportunities to work in jobs they didn't have
Are you
before.
are you gonna tell them to code? Don't you do it. Don't you be so cheeky.
Well, I mean, like, obviously for some people that's not, I mean, like, you say that's cheeky, but you're literally telling me that people who go and work shitty fucking factory jobs for their whole lives are going to find meaning in that. I mean, like, if I can make yours sound just as cheeky as mine, the reality is that if you're like a 60-year-old fucking trucker, you're probably not going to go back and get your undergrad in comp sci. I'm not an idiot, of course. But in terms of like education and whatnot, yeah, we have way more people that work service-related jobs in the U.S. This is a service economy now in the U.S., more so than that have existed at any other point in U.S. history. And more people are learning to get into those engineering type jobs, which is why I think we should invest more in education and whatnot, which I think is largely positive. Yeah. I mean, I can understand you making my argument. It's not cheeky, but you're literally telling me that the only way that a person can derive meaning or social cohesion or stability is to be able to go down to the fucking factory to work, from 8 to 6 every day. I don't know. That seems kind of sad to me.
I don't know. I think you're like sort of conflating like lower class employment with bad employment, or like there seems to be like a lot of like classism like emanating from your speech, right? Something is like, why would someone want to be anything as lowly and vile and debased as a truck worker or as a McDonald's worker? These such things have no value in our economy. But surely, like from even a basic economic level, like we need these people in our economy. We need these sort of low wage, low skill workers. And I don't think it's because something's like low skill, low pay that it's bad or derived of value.
So when
something to be shunned and hated.
Well, I'm not saying, first of all, I never said anything should be shunned and hated. We absolutely do need these jobs. When I say bad, I'm usually talking with respect to the amount of happiness a person is able to pursue. And I mean, like, if you have to do like backbreaking shitty work in a factory every day and you don't have as much time to see your kids, you don't have the ability to take a vacation ever, you don't even have, and then this is a little different too. Like in the US, we don't get vacation hours or any of that shit either. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think those jobs are going to contribute to a lot more misery than somebody that can work, a comfier job that allows them to stay healthier, to keep their body safer, that doesn't have as many risks posed to their life, that allows them to take vacation time and spend more time with their family. Yeah, I would maybe it sounds like classism, but I mean, yeah, I feel like more people ascending to like middle class jobs and not having to do backbreaking or miserable work that doesn't pay as much or give them as much flexibility in their lives is generally a good thing to work the higher paying jobs. Yeah.
Okay, but if that is true, if I am to actually buy that argument that this sort of current neoliberal economic system is causing an increase in happiness, why is suicide increasing every single year? Why is it?
Well, careful. I never said it was causing an increase in happiness. I don't think I could back that up with any data. I'm pretty sure we have like more depression and shit today. I think it's hard to say, because it's hard to say whether or not it's just being diagnosed or not. But I mean, like one thing that I can agree with you on that is interesting that nobody really talks about is I do think this kind of like neoliberal obsession over GDP over all other fucking things is really fucking cancerous. And I do agree that what.
Oh, sorry, I said it's horrendous. No, go on.
Yeah. And I do agree that we clearly have fucking failed miserably in helping people become happier, that just giving people more economic access doesn't make people happier, and giving people access to more technology in some cases demonstrably makes people less happy, like people that spend time on social media and whatnot. I totally agree with that, but I don't feel like that unhappiness is caused by like neoliberal policies. I feel more like we just haven't really spent any time teaching people how to be happy, and now we have more tools today than we ever had before to achieve happiness. It's just nobody really knows how to use them properly, is what it feels like to me.
I just think, why didn't people need to be taught to be happy before?
I don't know. Probably because your life was so simple and you didn't really think about as much that like you had this like baseline level of happiness that you were kind of content not doing as much. Would be my guess.
I mean, it's just like the way I understand your argument is that, well, how can I advocate for like coal mining? Coal mining is a very like miserable job. People are miserable doing it. But like you're not like laying out the correlation between like sort of the decline in coal mining and the rise in suicide. Like, surely if I was to be like a very bad statistician, I would say these two things are like immensely correlated.
Well, like, so, I mean, what I would point, first of all, suicide hasn't like risen like astronomically or something, okay? It's definitely increased, but it's not like half our population is killing themselves or something. Or at least in the US even. I don't know about the UK numbers. People are saying in the UK suicide has fallen since the 1998 or whatever. I don't know if that's true. A record low. You guys are at a record low suicide for men.
Oh yeah, the government invests a lot of money in it, yeah.
Oh, well, look, there you go. There's an example of
of
taking, like, if you invest a lot of money in it, you're doing it because you're benefiting off of economic policies. You can effectively tax certain industries, then you can allocate money in areas to improve the well-being of the citizens. I mean, that's a good thing if that's true. Yeah.
No, you are correct on that. But to me, that seems like sort of like a more like, right? It's like, just like your model to me is like we're going to sort of like cause all this damage, then we're gonna like bring in the welfare state to save the day. But that's just like a bandage, and like your overall cure is just like, well, coal miner, well, person from Virginia, just learn to code, learn to like just like educate yourself more. But like, I don't know, dude. Surely like
I mean, like,
we as go ahead.
yeah, it's what I'm proposing is not simple, and I would never pretend it to be simple. It's absolutely like, and even what you're proposing is right. Everything is insanely fucking complicated these days, unfortunately, because in large part because of the amount of globalization that exists, right? A policy that is enacted in California could have a dramatic impact on people in fucking African countries, right? Like, there's so much shit. I just think that, like, basically what my goal is that I think that technology and wealth have the capability, not necessarily will, but have the capability of making people happier. I think that. So my goal when I look at any sort of economic or political philosophy is what can I do to grow that economic pie as large as possible? Because the larger that is, and then once that economic pie is so huge, we can use certain tools, fiscal tools or whatever, to reallocate some of that economic pie to different areas in society to make people happier. So in the US, maybe this would look something like doing something about our horrible fucking healthcare, or maybe doing something about our horrible fucking education. Right? Like things like these that would ultimately go towards making people healthier and happier, right? If you have more education, you can work better jobs and whatnot. If you're not dying because you have cancer, you live longer, right? Stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, no one's really disagreeing with like technology can bring immense happiness. I'm not arguing against technology. I'm arguing against the current like economic and political system that's causing this misery. I mean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with self-driving cars. We have to like sort of like take into account like the fact of the human experience and the human suffering, right? And like we have to do something to like. What do you think about economic inequality?
Um, a long time ago, I didn't really care about it because as long as poor people are fine, that's okay. But I'm pretty sure inequality, like very, very highly correlates or predicts a lot of social unrest. So it's probably a bad thing.
Yeah, but like then how do you like square that with like globalization being like directly tied to a rise in like mass inequality?
Well, the inequality. I mean, the poor people seem to be getting wealthier, but the problem is the inequality comes from the wealthy people getting insanely fucking wealthy. It seems like we probably need to find ways to redistribute some of the wealth away from the insanely fucking wealthy people. That being said, the only way to effectively do that is with globalized governments as well, right? Because you can't tax the fuck out of wealthy people in one country because they'll just piece the fuck out and go to another one. So you need a way to enforce this type of stuff like multilaterally.
I mean, yeah, I agree, but I don't think like multilateralism like necessitates international government. I mean, I think this is something we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I
just,
guess
like,
it doesn't,
regular
but like
cooperation.
without, I mean, international government just kind of like makes everything easier rather than having to like ratify treaty after treaty. Like in the EU, if you guys want to pass some sort of like restriction or legislation or something or some sort of trade thing that impacts all of you, like you guys can like, is it your commission that proposes legislation and the parliament just votes on it and it's done? And it's like so fucking
yeah.
easy, and that process is so streamlined and so quick. Whereas like if you wanted to change something like a multilateral trade agreement, I imagine the process for doing that can probably get pretty complicated or be more messy, especially because you'd have to do it for multiple multilateral trade agreements. Like, I don't know, it just seems like a really clusterfucky.
I mean, I don't know, dude. You say you're quite liberal, but everything you're saying to me like is setting off a lot of like red flags for like intrinsic authoritarianism. It's like, why do we have to do all this like dumb democratic shit? Like, why do we have to like talk and negotiate? Why can't we just like pass the treaties via this like international government?
Well, the international government is wait, what do you
Yeah?
mean? The international government is democratically elected. What do you mean?
Oh, I don't know, my dude.
The
I don't know,
EU?
'cause
Wait, everything in the EU is democratically elected. What do you mean?
but not really.
Well, yes,
Um,
really.
the
Wait, what do you mean not really?
the EU lacks a huge amount of what we call like sort of democratic. It has a big like democratic deficit. As
In
it's
what
like,
way?
yeah, we'll take it even like the European Council, right? Like they're not directly elected by anyone, but of
Whoa,
course,
whoa, whoa,
like
whoa, whoa. Just because it's
what?
not directly elected, those come from your members of parliament who are directly elected.
Yeah, I get that. Which is why I didn't say undemocratic. I said democratic deficit. As
Wait,
in
wait.
there is,
So
like,
do you
what?
in the U.S. then
Sorry,
is
go on.
every single thing we do a democratic deficit? I've heard this argument before, but like this, it almost sounds like it's boiling down to like if you don't literally vote on it via referendum, it's not democracy.
What American system are you talking about?
Wait for what? Oh, I'm sorry. So like in the United States, well actually I'm pretty sure fucking everywhere. You generally have things except for like Switzerland. You have representative democracies. So you elect
Yeah.
officials, and those people are the ones that vote on your behalf, right? Mm-hmm. Which is
That should be the EU Parliament, but it isn't. But yeah,
wait, how is that not the EU Parliament?
because the EU Parliament essentially acts as a just rubber stamping because they can't actually propose legislation. So if you
No,
were,
no,
like,
but the
if
people
you're-
that propose
what?
legislation isn't it one head from each of your states? Are the people that is it? You said is it not the EU? Is it the EU Commission? Isn't that one person from each of your member states of the EU that's
Yep.
from your members of parliament that are elected?
Yep, the Commission are unelected bureaucrats, but they are appointed, and then the Commission elects more bureaucrats, and then they elect more bureaucrats, and you get to a point where if you want to take down someone in the EU Parliament, there is such an like a big obtuse line to like getting any sort of like democratic like knife or any way to like get back at them that like there is a huge like deficit there.
I mean, but
There's a
this
huge
is
part-
true
Yeah, because
everywhere.
you have to understand like there has to be like accountability for like democracy to be an actual thing, right? And the EU
Yeah,
is a
but
very like unaccountable institution because like the bureaucrats are like so like far from any like sort of election,
I mean, like,
right?
couldn't I say the same thing about your own prime ministers, though?
How so?
You don't vote on your prime ministers. You don't elect them at all, no?
No.
So, I
Yeah,
mean,
but
aren't they
like
unaccountable? Aren't people, like, pissed at, like, Cameron or whatever? Like, that people will do shit and then just, like, piece the fuck out of the government and there's no accountability there? Or...
no, because everyone's directly accountable to their MP, and their MP chooses the prime minister. So that is the way that everyone has like this sort of like innate line to like accountability, right?
Well, wouldn't you argue the EU Commission is directly accountable to the members of parliament who are voted on literally directly by everybody in the member states of the EU?
Yeah, I mean they're accountable. Like there is a deficit there. It's not as democratic as it should be.
How would you
Like,
change
it's
it?
which-
What would,
which
like, a
way-
proposed change be?
Well, I would have the EU Parliament be actually able to fucking propose legislation, but which is a bit of a, but that would of course be require like giving them like more sovereignty. But like if they, I don't know. Yeah, that's
Can't your
pretty
members
good.
of parliament? So I don't know the entire ins and outs, but if I had to, I would put money on this. My guess is going to be that if someone in the EU Parliament thought that there was good legislation to be passed, they would probably just talk to the head of your members of parliament who are in the EU Commission and just suggest it through them. No, wouldn't that be the way that they would do it?
I'm sure there's some like sort of I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure like what like.
Well, like,
actual
let's say, for
institutions there
instance,
are to,
how
like,
many
oh,
members of
sorry.
parliament? Do you know how many MPs are in the UK?
MEPs or MPs?
I mean, MEPs, sorry.
MEPs, no fucking clue. Not a clue.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. So you have
no one
73.
knows MP.
You have 73 MEPs in the United Kingdom, right? So my guess is that if any of your members of the European Parliament, if any of them wanted to like pass legislation or suggest legislation, they would probably just talk to whichever one of those guys is on the EU Commission and do it. No.
I know because like if you sort of feels like you're trying to draw like immense parallels between like the EU and like the UK Parliament,
Or even the
But, like,
U.S. government, yeah.
but like I don't know, like let's say you're like a person in, like the UK who's like you're very into climate change. You want like the EU to like pass some like sort of green legislation, right? Normally, what you do is that you go to like your MP. Your MP would like lobby the government, and that's how you get your voice heard. But like, what do you do if you're like a European citizen? You go to your MEP. Your MEP goes to Parliament, and there's like not really like a clear defined way for them to like propose the legislation you as a citizen want.
Well,
And that is where the deficit comes in.
Yeah, but that deficit is actually an example of democracy. Like, your problem there is that what you are pointing towards is wanting authoritarianism and democracy is standing in your way. The reason why it would be so hard to do it is because you need so many people to come together in an agreement for it that it would be more difficult to do it. Like, all of the members of parliament, or at least a majority, I don't know exactly what the threshold is for passing legislation. You would have to get tons of countries together to democratically vote on and agree on these things, right? They would have to vote on members of parliament that all are in majority support of that. But like the ability to just do something very easily and quickly, that would be like an authoritarian type of thing. Like, one person wants to go to one person in government and then have that suggested and quickly passed through, which seems less democratic than the other thing.
No, it just depends on like sort of like what is the acceptable degree of separation from the people who make the actual like executive decisions and the people who are on the actual like electoral public. Because if you're talking about UK Parliament, there's like literally one level of divide. It's you, your MP, and then legislation. If you're talking about the EU, it's you, your MEP, then it's, it's the commissioner, who you have no say in, aside from who you vote for, but like you have no real control over that. And then it's just like you have to like sort of like hope this legislation like manifests out of thin air.
It's a
Like
rare.
what?
I really don't like this idea that you have no control over it. Like, would you agree with me if I told you you have no control over your prime minister?
Well, we're getting no control, but like not as much control as there should be.
Sure.
There's
Do
a big
you think
deficit
you
of
guys should
control.
vote on your prime minister like the U.S. votes on their president?
Not really, no.
Why not?
Because it seems like a pretty bad system, the old presidential system. It seems like it involves a lot of like
But we
weird
have
like
more democracy than you. Wouldn't you argue that's good that we have more democracy than you because we can directly vote on our leader? How is it that the UK is like? It's interesting to me that like you talk about red flags. Your UK prime minister, you have like the perfect level of democracy there, but in the EU it's not enough, and in the US it's too much. I don't understand.
Well, I just think the presidential system is like leaves room to a lot of like lobbying and corruption, which is like what I'm not really down for.
But that has nothing to do
yeah.
with democracy or not. That just has to do with whether you think we fund our elections responsibly in the U.S. It's just
be, like,
interesting to me. I'm just curious why you think that
Yeah.
not voting on your prime minister is okay, but then when it comes to like EU Parliament stuff, like there's too much separation.
Oh, no, sorry. I think I've lost this. Can you like lay out
Oh
like a
yeah, sorry.
fundamental critique?
So
To
like
me? Yeah, sorry.
I don't understand. You say that in the EU Parliament that there's
Yeah.
you're too many steps removed from being able to vote on legislation, or
Yeah.
being able to propose legislation, even though your European Commission members literally come from your members of Parliament that are directly voted on by you guys. But you say you're too many steps removed there. So I'm curious why you think it's good that your prime ministers are just appointed by your parties, that they don't actually you don't vote on your prime minister at all. They're just appointed by whatever I think the majority party is or whatever, right?
Yeah, because from what my understanding is that because in our presidential system, the prime minister is more sort of like a lead figurehead figure, right? Whereas in a presidential system, like the president has actual like executive like overriding power. I don't think that Theresa May can like veto the parliament. I think she just like sort of like is like the figurehead essentially.
Sure. So I do not know the ins and outs of the UK government. I very briefly kind of understand how your parliament works. So, but like, isn't Theresa May a pretty important figure? Like, aren't there a lot of talks recently about like Theresa May's Brexit deal, that she's like the figurehead or the person in charge of like kind of negotiating a lot of these types of things? Isn't she more than just a figurehead? Doesn't like,
I mean, not really. She has like a Brexit secretary who like does the negotiating for her. But like, yeah, as like, yeah, again, like as a prime minister, you're really just like a figurehead, like mobilizer for your party, more like a cheerleader essentially. Whereas a president has like executive power, and that would be like the main difference here, right? Well, I say it's easy for you to confuse that because like in recent years, the UK system has become like heavily Americanized, where we sort of like treat it like it is a presidential system, but like in actuality, it's not. It shouldn't be probably.
um,
But no, I get your critique, by the way. I get your critique, and it's very well placed.
sure. Hold on, fuck. People are saying that you're not representing the UK government accurately, but I don't know. I don't know enough.
What are they saying?
Wait, so what exactly has he said that you guys disagree? Cameron resigned and May got picked with no democratic input. I don't think he would disagree with that.
She ran for election, though. 2017, there was an election.
The
Yeah,
UK PM has way more power than the US president. I'm almost 100% positive that is absolutely not true. There's no fucking way that's true. There's no way that's true. Without knowing anything about the UK, I'm almost positive that that's not true. The US president literally makes fucking Supreme Court appointments. There's no way that the UK prime minister has more power than the US president.
I mean, she may have like some powers, but like nowhere near like U.S. president powers. Yeah, which is why I was just sort of objecting to like the conflation.
The two Brexit secretaries during the negotiations have said they've done literally nothing, or they literally had nothing to do with the deal. In a parliamentary majority, the PM is literally the king. The PM has a lot of say in Brexit negotiations, and Brexit secretaries resigned because they didn't like the state of negotiations. PM has as much power as they do control of the party. The PM is more like Pelosi. Is Pelosi the House Majority Leader right now? Hold on, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Speaker of the House is House Majority Leader. Okay. She has a lot of fucking power. The role and powers of the Prime Minister. Okay, I can't read all this right now. Okay, never mind. I don't care too much about this. Oh, wait. Speaker is not Majority Leader. What's the difference? U.S. President is separate from and equal to Congress. In UK, the Prime Minister is a member within the House and has a lot of behind-the-scenes pull, but that's about it. So, okay, so like the UK Prime Minister is more or less equal to like the Speaker of the House or the like the Senate Majority Leader or whatever, right?
I have to assume so. I don't know too much about
they're people. They exist within the confines of like that legislative body, pretty much. Whereas in the United States, the president is its own separate kind of like functional power that can like veto our entire legislative body. But okay, yeah, never mind. But that's getting bogged down in these details aren't that important. Yeah, I don't buy that argument as much that it's not democratic. I don't know. It feels like it's. I mean, it functions as a representative democracy. Probably should is what it feels like to me. But
I mean, I don't know. If you were telling me that it was like democratic, it would have to be, I would say, to some degree representative. And if you looked like sort of in Europe, how broadly opposed things like TTIP or the TPP were, but yet they were still being like actively proposed and actively pursued by the EU Parliament. It was just like, clearly there was like some like division here between like people electing representatives and like the actual actions they're taking.
Wait, but didn't the TPP die in Europe? Isn't that?
I thought it was just a Trump. Didn't Trump kill it?
Well, it was dead under Obama in the U.S., but that doesn't mean the EU can't participate. No.
I'm not too sure it was dead under Obama.
It was dead under Obama. I don't even know if the TPP was Yeah, if the TPP involved the EU. But in terms of the United States negotiating the TPP, it was dead under Obama. Yeah.
Well, fuck, but yeah, I don't know. It just seems to me that sort of like there's this like big divide between like sort of like the bureaucrats representing the countries and the actual like political opinions of the people in the countries themselves.
Oh, I'm sorry. People, you're saying the T-tip?
Yeah.
Oh, that's something totally different. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hold on, real quick. For people saying Obama was a TPP, the TPP was 100% dead in the last half of Obama's term. That was never, ever, ever passing Congress. That's why it was fucked. Trump takes credit for killing it, but the TPP was 100% dead under Obama. That was never, ever, ever passing. But I don't know anything about T-tip. Sorry.
Oh god. Oh god, even I'm lost. Fuck.
Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership is a proposed trade agreement between the European Union and the United States. Oh, cute. Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about this, so I can't speak to whether or not people like this. Like, is there like I guess like to more broadly, are there like large things that the EU does that like most of the members of the EU don't like?
Well, if you look at things like sort of the policy of like I think I'm not sure it's actually, I think I'm not sure what it's actually called, but it's like the forced resettlement of refugees who've came to Germany. That's like widely opposed by pretty much everyone. But like
you say widely opposed, but Angela Merkel supported that. Like that was something that like for at least a while.
And where is she now? Where is our darling Angela? She kicked out of her own party for being so unpopular.
Yeah, but you're giving me an example of the system working. Like she supported something, it lost popularity with Germans, and then she was ousted as the leader of the government.
Yeah, populist uprising, my dude. Get into it.
Yeah, but I mean, you're showing what you're showing me is the system working. Like,
how so?
Well, if like your example would make more sense if she was like if she held on to power despite the fact that she lost popularity and right. But the fact that she decided to resign or whatever is like evidence that the system seems to be working. Does that not make sense? Wait, did she actually win re-election? People are saying she won. Okay, hold on, real quick. Hold on, two real quick things because Chad is freaking out. Firstly, when I say the TPP was dead under Obama, I don't mean Obama killed it. Obama was a supporter of it. I'm pretty sure even Hillary was a mass supporter of it too. But it was dead under the Obama administration, as in like it died in during Obama's presidency. Obama was a huge supporter of the TPP. Okay, and Hillary was as well. I'm not saying that Obama killed it. If that's what you think, no. Angela Merkel is stepping down. She's resigning. She didn't get fucking like ousted. Like people didn't violently throw her out. But I'm pretty sure Angela Merkel is resigning because she's losing popularity. No one is saying that she got like fucking like kicked the fuck out or that everyone fucking hates her. But I'm pretty sure her reason to resign is largely tied into the fact that she's not as popular anymore, right? If I'm incorrect in that, please correct me. But otherwise, shut the fuck up. Holy shit.
Oh dear. Your chat's wilding, my dude.
Yeah, hold on. My chat is Superman. She won a fourth term in 2018 and decided not to run again in 2021. I thought she was largely influenced by that because she felt like she wasn't doing as good of a job and she was losing support in her party. He said that. He said that she got... I don't think he... Okay, I'm sorry. Did you mean that she literally got kicked out of her party? It sounded cheeky when he said it. That like she's like losing popularity. Yeah, no. Fucking... Jesus, fuck. Okay, sorry. Yes. So... Angela Merkel, in response to a lot of the immigration stuff especially, has lost support in her party. That's something that I am aware of, and my understanding of it is that that's part of the reason why she is stepping down, or maybe even the central reason for why she's stepping down, as being, okay.
Yeah, no, I got you. But like the case you were making to me was that.
Oh yeah, so the case I was making was that.
Oh, sorry, yeah, go on.
Yeah, the fact that she is stepping down shows that it's working. It's not undemocratic. Like people are.
No, but that's more in a German. Like, and she wasn't like president of the EU, unless I was wrong there. That's more a national thing. If you're looking at like things on like sort of like an EU level, right? The fact that the EU is like so like heavily behind like the forced like resettlement of like migrants in Germany, but like across like the European continent, it's so like widely opposed.
I don't know if that's true. I thought that was up to each country to determine how many refugees they were capable of taking in, right?
Am I wrong? I could swear they were going to find countries that didn't take them in.
I don't think forced resettlement was, or at least not like in the levels of that like country taking them in. For instance, like for Sweden, I don't think Sweden was forced to take on as many immigrants as they did. I thought they opted for that. Or same thing for Germany. That Germany wasn't forced to take in as many immigrants as they did.
They weren't. No. But they were, I believe, threatening countries like Poland, I believe, to start taking them in or else get fined.
Sure, if you don't take in any, sure. But I mean, like that kind of makes sense. Like if it didn't come from them, it would have to come from like the UN or something, right? Like I mean, wouldn't you want the burden of refugees to kind of be like split across the continent rather than like all focused in a single country?
No, we're talking about refugee policy now.
Yeah, maybe this is kind of like a different topic, but like, let's say there are a bunch of refugees coming from a certain area. Wouldn't you want, if you were a country, wouldn't you want the ability to say like, hey, you guys all need to like kind of share this burden rather than like, well, we're the first stop, so we're taking in literally everybody, or we're going to have to deal with this huge fucking problem?
I mean, that's an okay perspective to take, but like how it actually plays out in reality is that it just results in like a huge like rush from like through like the poor European countries to get into like the richer European countries to like I don't know get like better like welfare settlements. Like that's how Angela Merkel's policy like played out in real life. It wasn't an equal division. It was a very it's still just as clustered as it once was, right?
Um,
Right, because now instead of like clustering in like Italy, they're all clustered in Germany, and they're in Calais, and they're in France, and they're just clustering in the richer countries now. So I don't think you've like solved like the problem you purport to be solving.
well, rather than like literally like all like several million like sitting in whatever the first country they come into, like Turkey or whatever. Um, fuck, I don't know as much about like the resettlement policies of the EU. So, but I mean like it seems like this is something that has to happen regardless. Otherwise, you're literally just gonna have a fuck ton of people like stopping in the first country they get to.
And shouldn't that be like, wasn't that what a refugee is? Someone who's just like literally just seeking safety. Like once
Yeah,
you
but
reach
like
a
if,
safe
if, if
country, like
5
you
million
like, well,
Syrians show up in one country, I don't know if like one country is able to take on that many people without it having like a
oh,
severe detriment.
yeah, okay, I can like theoretically like buy that argument, but like that to me just seems like to be a reason to like give more aid money. Like why does that necessitate like the actual resettlement?
Well, because I don't know if one country can handle resettling that many people. Like if you have a stronger economy, you probably have more demand for these people and more places for them as well. No?
I mean maybe, but then that's economic migration. That's a complete different topic.
Well, I mean,
If you're
they're
saying if you're saying like well, actually we should be taking these people in because they're economically viable, then like
not
then
necessarily
they're
economically
economic
viable, but that
migrants.
you have the economic viability to support them, right? Like a country like Germany or the UK is probably going to be able to support more refugees than like Greece, right?
Yeah, and then the UK should be forced to give more money, or should willingly give up more money to refugee camps to
What do
helping
you
like
think would be?
resettlement.
So I'm just gonna guess what would happen if you were in the UK. Let's say theoretically there were refugees that were settling in like Germany,
Okay.
and the UK is being forced to send money to Germany for aid. It seems like you guys would get even madder at that than the refugees actually going to your own country.
No, not really. I think the UK gives a lot of money in like aid to like refugee camps already. I think it's like
Yeah, but I'm saying
I
like
think
if instead
yeah,
of
well,
resettling anybody at all, you were literally forced to ship like hundreds of millions of dollars to these
or,
countries.
or not even for to say like just to give us the alternative. Say well either you take them in or you give us the money. I think that's like probably the better option, right?
I guess maybe. I mean, alternatives are good. I guess if you want to choose,
I
yeah,
mean, it seems like a win-win to me, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because I mean I don't know. Um, how do you feel about the old refugee crisis? If it
I,
is like crisis. Well,
there's a lot of different parts of it. Which part specifically?
no, just in general. How do you feel about the European response to it?
I mean, I would have to go look up more specifics. It seems like in the countries that I'm familiar with, it seems like Sweden probably took on too many people. It seems like Germany is doing just fine. I don't see any problems there, although a lot of people seem to say there are. I know that there's like a big wave of kind of like populist movements that are growing. Parties that used to get like 3 to 5% support are getting like 15 to 18%
Oh
support
yeah.
and shit. That's kind of happening all across Europe now. I don't know if it's directly in response to this refugee thing, but I think a lot of it plays into it. Um,
And do
I
you think
mean,
populism is a bad? Do you think it's a bad thing? The rise of populism in Europe?
yeah, I hate populism. It makes me cringe. Yeah,
Oh my. Why? Why, my dude?
because I'm very anti-nationalistic, so I don't.
You're-
Yeah, I'm not very big like on the concept of like a nation or like that thing doesn't. It's not something that I care about that much. I guess. Yeah.
So you're actually like against like the actual like fundamental concept of a nation state.
The fundamental concept of a nation state, insofar as you need like a federal body that legislates things within the borders of a country to maintain control and safety and shit, that's probably good. But the idea that people tie in a lot of their identity and use it as a means to exclude other people, I'm not comfortable with that idea, I guess. But I'm like on this hyper liberal fucking like individualism shit. So I mean, I understand that position is probably pretty extreme.
I mean, it just seems like so your main objection to nationalism isn't actually nationalism, but the like perceived exclusion that comes with it.
Kind of, I guess, like more fundamentally, I'm not a very big group person. Like, I'm very big in like people kind of like trying to figure out things that make them happy on their own, or things that they like or dislike on their own. And every time I see people get very stuck into like groupthink or big group mentalities, and they start to draw their meaning from that, I feel that is like a detriment to personal development. So like as an example of this, I'll give like very unserious examples. Right? Do you play video games at all?
I do, yeah.
Okay, sure. So I play video games, obviously. I fucking played video games my whole life, and I fucking love video games. Right now, I'm a PC gamer because that's just what I've been playing for the past like 15 years. And like I would say that like I'm a person that plays PC games, but then there are people that call themselves PC gamers, right? And these are people who like, it seems like in order to be part of this group, you end up joining like PC Master Race, and you spend like half your time shitting on people that play like consoles. And it's like, just because you have the group identity of being X doesn't mean you have to shit on everybody that does Y. Like, that's so cancerous. And I notice that there are a lot of people that do that in order to find meaning or happiness or purpose in life, you take on some group identity, and so many group identities necessitate the exclusion of people that don't fit into that group identity. And that's a huge negative, and I don't see the positive in joining that group. Like, if you could find like this meaning in other ways, whatever, that's kind of like a personal thing. And then I extend that to like nations as well, I guess.
It's such a weird concept to me, because surely, like, because things like coming from that sort of like constructivist like lens, right? Like, things only exist because we acknowledge like the existence of the other, right? The only reason that like France is France and Germany is Germany because we acknowledge that like Germans are Germans and the French are French, and there's a difference there. Like, it seems to me that like, I mean, I just don't see like why do you have like this such like intrinsic issue with like differences, or like acknowledging differences?
I guess like group differences that are based on things that don't matter to me. So like I can like I don't when I think of like myself, like I don't think of myself as like an American. That's not like an important part of my identity. Or if I met somebody else and they were German or French or whatever, I mean, like it's the only thing that usually tells me is like an accent. But like I don't really care past that too much. And whether or not I had to think of things that are good for like certain groups of people or bad for certain groups, like marking this like by country. I don't know. I'm just not like super big on drawing a lot. I don't get any meaning or purpose or satisfaction or anything from calling myself an American, I guess.
So you personally get like you get no joy out of so you feel like a citizen, sort of a citizen of the world, sort of like modern cosmopolitan.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I don't even know about
aren't you just like sort of like projecting your experiences onto the entirety of humanity?
Oh yeah, 100%. This is why I said I understand it's an extreme position. I understand a lot of people do get meaning from this, but yeah, for me, it's just I feel like I didn't do anything. Like me being an American is just, I'm a victim of circumstance. I say victim, I mean a beneficiary of circumstance. But it's not like I did anything to earn myself being an American, and I didn't contribute to the history of this country or do anything that made this country what it is. So I don't know. I just don't feel like a strong attachment to being American. If I was relocated to another country, I would just be part of that country or whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
So you say you're less so a citizen of the world and more so a citizen of nowhere, or
Sure, yeah, that yeah, like I kind of I have like my own history and my own past, and these are the things that I've done and accomplished, and then that's where I draw my identity and meaning from. And again, I acknowledge that this like might be kind of an extremist position to take, or it seems to be compared to most people. But yeah, I don't know. I don't draw a lot of like I don't care that I'm half Cuban, or I don't even know what my European ancestry is. Like these are things that just don't interest me very much compared to kind of like what I've done on my own or the person I am today.
oh my gosh, intense liberalism.
Yeah,
Say,
it is.
Pretty intense, pretty intense, my dude.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you say you don't feel like the need to be a part of any like larger entity because I don't know, dude. Maybe like video games are like sort of like an isolationist thing. Maybe you feel like sort of like separated from the world, and they were just like content playing games. Or, like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think other people are experiencing something that you like don't experience?
I mean, there are ways that I can say this politely, and then there are ways that I can say it very condescendingly. Let me think of the
Go for it, my dude.
Yeah, well, no, like I don't mean to be condescending or whatever. I don't try to say that way, but like, I feel like how fundamental do we get as people? Okay, who are evolved to fuck and survive. Well, reproduce really is our only goal, right? And then we try to live long enough in order to fucking have kids. As a result of this, we've been given, some level of intelligence that allows us to do this. A byproduct of that intelligence seems to be that we ask questions sometimes that don't really have good answers. So for instance, like, what is the meaning of life, or what is our purpose for being here? I think that we've been gifted the ability to ask questions that are unanswerable. And because of that, we have to find things to fill those holes. And some people do it with religion, some people do it with nationalism. And I think that filling these holes with these types of group thoughts gives so many negative parts to it that there's no reason to do that when you could fill it with other types of things. So like I define myself based on what I like to do or what my hobbies are or what I'm personally interested in. And I spend a great deal of time thinking about that and pursuing that. And that's how I define myself. But sometimes it feels like if you don't want to take I don't want to say take the time, because it's like, again, it sounds really condescending, but like the shortcut to finding meaning or purpose in life, the shortcut to finding reasons to exist is to just take on a group identity and go like, okay, well, I am Christian, I am Muslim, like I have God or Yahweh or Allah, and that's my reason for life, and I'm just going to go ahead and bite the entire set of rules that they have, and that's how I'm going to live my life. But there's so much negative baggage that comes along with all of that I would hope that people could find a way to find purpose or exist without needing those larger group like religions, whether it's a national religion, an ethnic religion or whatever, in order to do that. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it's also a very, very, very old idea. The fact that religion is going away, the nation's going away, culture is going away. We're going to become this like one big brained like cosmopolitan unit. Like this is actually a very, very old idea. Like tracing back to like Woodrow Wilson in like the 1940s, and like the reality is like that hasn't worked. That has not panned out. Like the worldview you're actually proposing delivers opposite results to the ones you want, right? Because we're seeing a rise in nationalism, rise in religion, rise in what you perceive to be toxic ways of driving
Well, I mean,
meaning.
to some extent, but a lot of these are also in response to like pretty recent events. Like I would argue that it seemed like before like 2013, before this big refugee crisis, it seemed like the world was pushing more in a progressive way. I don't want to say to the left, but was kind of like pushing more progressively. But then in response to like people react predictably in fearful ways, right? And fear is a really big driving factor of a lot of populist thought. And it seems like that's where a lot of this is coming from recently.
I mean, it could be, but you're sort of describing it as like a modern phenomenon, whereas I'm sort of tracing its roots back to like, I don't know, maybe like principles of like human nature.
I mean, you say
Right.
that, but I mean, like past World War II, with the advent of the European Union, whatever, like stuff. I say European Union, but like with this more kind of like unified thought across the world, it seems like we've largely avoided like global conflict. Now, that's not to say that there aren't places, like Ireland and other places across Europe and South America and everything where all this violence and shit still happens. But in terms of like avoiding like this huge international like global conflict of like fucking killing millions of people in these huge wars, it seems like we've done a pretty good job of avoiding that since World War II.
Did we do a good job, or did nukes do a good job?
I mean,
I'd lean on the side of nukes there. It seems to me that the existential threat of being destroyed far supersedes the liberal desire to be cosmopolitan and happy, right?
I mean, I don't necessarily know if it's just cosmopolitan and happy, but like even countries, I mean, like countries today, I mean, fuck, like look, like Germany is like the leader of the modern world in the EU right now. I don't necessarily mean that as a threat to the UK or whatever. And like fucking 70 years ago, 80 years ago, they were trying to fucking kill all of you guys. I mean, that seems like good progress. I don't know if it's just the threat of nukes that like made everybody be like, oh yeah, Germany's cool now because we don't want to get fucking obliterated, right? I mean, I feel like you guys have made, I say you guys, but like I feel like the European continent has made a fuck ton of progress. Like Jesus Christ. Like that whole continent was like a fucking, your whole history is like filled with like savage fucking wars and battles and conquests and all of that shit. And it seems like you guys get along a lot better today than you ever have at any point in history. That's what it feels like today.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Do you think that so we're not seeing a violent Germany because they've been sort of defeated, squashed, and degraded, or do you think we're not seeing a violent Germany because they've already ostensibly achieved their aims of
No, I
essentially
don't think
dominating the European continent? What do you mean, they don't?
It feels to me like as time has gone on, people have generalized themselves more and more in every way. Like 10,000 years ago, you probably had like your family and your very small tribe. And then as time has gone on, we've collectivized to larger and larger groups. We've gone from tribes to larger tribes to cities to entire civilizations to, I mean, look at how fucking huge the Roman Empire was, and that spanned a multitude of cultures, like millennia, like there's like so much. And now we've got, even back to the starting of my nation, right? Like you had states, and then these people fought to see themselves as a country, and that country even was only 13 states, and even that took a lot of convincing. And now we've got 50 fucking states, and we don't even think twice about it. And now we see ourselves as being brotherly to Canadians. Or look at like the group of white, right? A long time ago, white people were literally Anglo-Saxons, period. Not disgusting Germans or Spaniards or any of this shit. And now like look at like fucking I'm considered white and I'm half Cuban. Or I debate with white nationalists with the last name Fuentes, right? Or like all these people consider themselves white today that didn't previously. So I don't know. It just seems like as time has gone on, humans have seen themselves as like larger and larger collectives. And I'm pretty sure even a lot of people in Europe, I know that you guys see yourselves as individual nations, but like you can very easily travel from one country to the next, and everybody in Europe has friends in every other country, in Europe. Like it seems to be like more and more and more common. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I would hope that we could continue to expand this, where we kind of like see ourselves as like a larger collective of people.
Oh yeah, of course. I don't know. I know not a single person who is aggressive to Europe, hostile, or doesn't even not like Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone likes Europe. It's the EU people don't like. I think that was like actually one of the slogans during the campaign. Like, yes, Europe, no EU. I mean, I love Europe. I love European people. I have tons of European friends. Yeah, but I mean, I don't see like what anything you're saying like necessitates like political union or like a giant superstate, which is just a great like Orwellian idea, isn't it?
I don't know if that's Aurelian, but did he have more books than 1984? I'm not sure. I don't know.
Oh yeah, he had like it's like Animal Farm and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I never read Animal Farm. I should read that book.
Oh, don't worry. It's neo-lib propaganda. Don't engage with it.
Sure.
Disgusting.
Yeah, fuck, I don't know.
Just kidding. I mean, it's tough, yeah, because I think going back to it, like that would be like I'd say one of the main challenges you have, like if you were to like sort of like convince someone on my side of the aisle, right? Because like, I mean, my view is that sort of every like harm you're presenting in this debate, every sort of boon you're presenting in this debate, can be easily achieved without like political union.
Well, it would be harder to do it. It's possible, but it would be much more difficult, right? If everything was a collection of multilateral trade agreements, then getting any single thing changed would be monumental, would be a huge pain in the ass. Whereas like a seamless government that is composed of democratically elected officials would have a much easier time doing things. So, I mean, like in your way, it's possible. It would just be harder, I guess.
Yeah, but again, like there's the good old Chinese red flag. It seems to be that you're like, well, democracy is great, but it's so inefficient. We need something beyond that.
Well,
But
no, what
I
I'm
don't know,
suggesting
like,
is democracy. I haven't gotten
but
away with it.
it's just so like weird from like an American level. You'd be like, well, actually, slow, because like isn't the American government defined by being slow and inefficient? Isn't that
Our American
perceived to be a
government,
good
even on
thing?
paper, doesn't work, and we're just starting to fucking realize that a lot of our shit only worked because of gentlemen's agreements. So, I mean, I don't know if I would sit here and champion the American form of government, but really, the American form of government is essentially what the EU is. I mean, it's more or less the exact same thing. If you replace states with countries, and you replace the federal U.S. government with the EU, we're pretty comparable to what you guys are. We need democratically elected officials that go to Congress, and then some of them are able to propose legislation, and then
Yeah, but did you say earlier that the EU wasn't a giant federal state?
Didn't I say? Well, yeah, because the main difference is that in the US, I guess we're a little bit more because we actually have unifying fiscal policies throughout our whole country, and in the EU you don't, which is like a huge separator.
Oh, so you're advocating the euro was a good idea?
Are
you that bold?
No. I would have to dig in a lot more to this. A unifying currency seems scary to me. When you have very dissimilar economies across different countries, losing control of your currency, I don't know if that's a good or bad idea. In one way I want to... Oh, no. I'm sorry. It doesn't work because you guys don't have like any unifying fiscal policy. You have no way to take tax money from one country and really give it to another like we do in the US. So I don't think you can have a unifying currency without like a unifying with some sort of fiscal policy.
Yeah, I agree with you naturally, but I just don't agree with the idea of like a unified fiscal policy.
I mean, it works really, really well in the United States.
Does it? You were just telling me how trash your country was. It's like, oh, the
I didn't say my country was trash. Well, I didn't say it was trash. And we're talking the difference between economic policy and theory versus like the actual efficiency of the government, which are two different things. I don't think the U.S. is a bad country. It's not like a strong part of my identity, and I'm not like super attached to it.
Oh, so you think like the U.S. system is like the peak system, the best one there is?
I would be so arrogant for saying that. I have nowhere near enough background in politics to be able to say that. I can't.
What? It seems to be what you're heavily implying.
No, I don't think so. I was just trying to draw a comparison between between like the way that you elect your people in the EU versus how the U.S. like kind of federal government works. That you can like make like a set of unifying laws across like a whole contingent federal system, and that it applies to every state or whatever. That you could do a similar thing in the EU. Wait, I don't know how we got here.
Oh, Mr. Bono, there's a nationalist in you yet. We just need to coax it out.
I don't. It's
I
gonna
see
be
it.
real hard.
I see the wee sparks in there.
Okay, good luck. I used to be very, very, very nationalist a long time ago, but I don't know. I've kind of lost that.
Oh, it's okay. Political change is like a roundabout. I'm sure in 5 years you'll be arguing for the ethno state with me.
I,
Or again.
hopefully not, but I guess.
Hopefully not, my dude.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, do you have any other final points or questions or thoughts or anything?
Let me check. Yeah, I suppose so. Maybe this one because I was like, no, I think you pretty much covered it. Really, I think we're pretty much done here.
I will say that, like, for you to hammer home these arguments, because I think that there are very strong arguments on your side that sometimes people are scared to make. And I think one of those really strong arguments is people will take it for granted. People will say things like, oh, well, the increase in access to wealth and technology makes the world a better place. That seems self-evident, but you can challenge that and it leaves a lot of people stumped. And I think it's a very valid line of questioning, because we've always presupposed that more technology and more money will make us better off, but it doesn't seem to make everybody happier. And that kind of like rampant consumerism is really fucking cancerous, a really cancerous part of a lot of capitalist systems. So I think that's definitely an avenue that's worth exploring more for sure.
Oh yeah, shit's fucked anyway. The only thing we can all agree on bipartisanly is destiny liberalism. Against the wall, all of them.
Listen.
Maybe not you. Would you say you're a neoliberal?
I call myself an omniliberal.
Don't.
It's my own group. Okay, I'm making my own political party. I'm pretty sure. Ideology. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Well, it's a meme or whatever. I just say it's a meme. But I'm pretty sure I'm a neoliberal. But like, I don't know what a neoliberal is, because half the time people say that like, oh, a neoliberal is just like a liberal that's okay with like redistributive policies and is for social healthcare and everything. And then other times people say neoliberals are just massive corporatists that hate the individual and don't want to redistribute anything. So I'm not even sure what the fuck a neoliberal technically is, because it seems to be used in different ways a lot.
Yeah, and from my understanding, it just means like Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, neoliberal evolution of the '80s. That's sort of like, and at least in academic books, like that's what it means to me. I don't know what the repugnant tankies in your chat say it is, but that ain't it. That ain't it, sis.
Okay.
That ain't it. But anyway, thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.
We ended up not talking too much about Brexit, ironically. But I think it's because I don't know, our disagreements are like too like fundamental to really bash out.
Sure, which is good. It's better to identify that than to talk past each other for 20 minutes. So.
Oh no, but anyway, it was a great chat.
Yeah,
and I thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
Now is this the part of the discussion? I see you do this when you end these conversations. You're like, well, thanks for coming on. Then you say, but I fucking hate you, and I'll have you deplatformed. Is this?
No, I don't hate you.
I've seen it. They're like, well, thank you for having on. You're very nice, and you're like, I don't respect you at all in the slightest.
No, don't worry. If I hated you, you would know it. No, if I hated you, you would know it. Don't worry. Most of the people that I debate know that I hate them. I think we have some fundamental disagreements over like the existence or like very fundamental things about human existence. But I mean, like history probably sides with you so far, and then I'm hoping for something new. So I understand our disagreements.
Yeah, plus on my side, I think like the conception of like actually proposing a world government, I've not ever like, engaged with that argument before, so I feel like unable to like sort of come at you in a way.
Sure.
Because it's like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
It's a very niche thing.
Yeah. All right. Well,
is that? Go ahead. Is that what omniliberalism is?
No, omniliberalism. I just say omniliberal. It doesn't mean anything. It's whatever my political views are at any given point in time. So.
Oh, it's okay. You can be a philosopher if you want to. Anyone can do it.
There we go.
Hop in, mate. Hop in.
All right. Well,
thank you for having me on.
Yep.
Mwah. Bye-bye.
I appreciate the talk. See you later.